Good morning. My name is Josh, and I'm the host of The Disputed. I'm here today with,
Rick Bayless.
and
Johnny G.
fellas, why don't we get an introduction this morning?
Yeah, I'm Rick Bayless the second. I have a well-known uncle, but I'm really my own person. I've been covering fantasy media for 5 seasons now, very close to the Lou area fantasy GMs, also close to some other fantasy leagues. The Las Vegas Fantasy League, favorite team there, the Scabbers. I'm very close to the New York Fantasy League, so I have some strong connections there. So I'm ready to just share fantasy knowledge and my wealth of media experience in the realm.
Thanks, Rick. Johnny?
I'm Johnny G. I am the one true champion and the inaugural winner of the Louisville Area Fantasy League in 2018. I have the ring to prove it, and I'm here to share my wealth of knowledge with the rest of the world on all things sports media related.
Thanks, Johnny. Here on The Disputed, we'll be talking about all things Lou area fantasy, fantasy basketball, and NBA related. Each morning, we'll begin with a takeoff segment where Johnny and Rick go head to head on relevant topics. The takeoff segment is sponsored by Bubble Juice, the official beverage of Lou area fantasy and The Disputed. Please drink responsibly. In this week's takeoff, we're going to take a look at each franchise in Lou area fantasy, starting with the Highland Howlers.
Oh, Luca. Listen, Luca is without a doubt the luckiest winner in Lou area fantasy history. He should not have been anywhere close to the conversation of winning a championship last year. In fact, if I had my say in it, I would force him to sell his team just like Robert Sarver.
Preach, Rick. I have nothing to disagree with you about here. Highland Howlers is just another example of a low tier fantasy player stumbling into a championship win.
All right, moving on, guys. The Waiver Ravers.
Chase is he's definitely one of the strongest fantasy players to ever be in the league, to ever win a title. Now, it was at a time that you could argue maybe the championship isn't as equal as other championships, but I'm not here to pontificate and say that it is. Chase is one of the strongest, if not the strongest member of this fantasy league, and the Waiver Ravers are sure to have another great year.
All right, that's time.
Look,
on
I'm going to
that
have
one.
to disagree with.
Oh,
I'm going to
okay,
have to disagree with you on that. Because, yes, historically, the Waiver Ravers are a good team, a great team even. But
Okay.
this man Chase,
Okay.
he's a banker. He plays stocks. He knows how to play a points league. He's not ready for the complexity, the art that is a categories league. So his historic success, it'll stay in the past.
Moving on, guys, we've got the Chicago Celtics.
Celtics are a real up and coming team. I believe they won their division last year. They've really come on strong the past couple of years. I think the Celtics are a surefire shoe-in for the playoffs this year.
I'm not so sure about that. I believe that Ben, when he's interested in the league, he gives it his all, and his team is generally fairly strong until the first sign of adversity comes, and he folds like a house of cards.
All right, the Kentucky Hazard.
Well, there's a lot that can be said about this franchise and the GM that pilots them. He might potentially be the greatest LM the league has ever had. He may potentially be the most treasonous LM the league has ever had. One thing is to be said, that's for sure. He's won a lot of regular season games and not a lot of playoff games.
Yeah, I have nothing to disagree with there about the regular season and playoffs. He just doesn't really seem to know how to set his team up for success when it comes to March. But when it comes to the slogs of the season, beating up on low-level teams, there's no one better than the Kentucky Hazard.
All right, guys, the Shaq Moves.
The Shaq Moves are my pick for the greatest of all time. Not only has a legitimate ring, but one of the greatest regular season and playoff teams historically of all time. And I could pick the Shaq Moves to win it all this year.
While I agree that Adam is one of the better GMs in this league. I cannot agree that he is the GOAT. His bullheaded nature is ultimately what leads to his undoing. His unwilling to compromise and drop players that he needs to drop frequently leads to his downfall, and he has been bit by the injury bug when it matters most in the past 3 seasons.
All right, guys. Moving on to the Louisville Samurais.
Well, Josh Sanders, he's an interesting fellow. He's got an interesting strategy when it comes to fantasy. It's generally throw up your hands and quit when things get tough. And that typically happens within the first to third week of the season. And in times when he's playing well, generally something terrible happens along the way and he ends up getting information taken from him in some way. And, it's never fair for Josh. And it's sad that he'll never have a winning season.
I'm close to agreement with you there, Johnny. Surprisingly enough, Sanders and the Samurais are unfortunately a bit like his favorite team, the Kings, stuck in purgatory.
Terrible.
A bit of the laughingstock of the league. But, they'll be on the cusp of playoffs here and there, never actually make it to the real big dance.
Feudal Lords of Dong.
This team, as opposed to the Samurais, really brings the passion week after week after week. There's always a lot of passion, but sometimes that passion can get a little misdirected. Sometimes that passion means a bad trade here or there, a little oversight year after year, one oversight after the next.
How could you think his seasons end in failure? He's a champion. He's the dark horse GOAT. He plays with a chip on his shoulder and gives it his all week after week. The man drafted Kevin Durant in the second round when no one else would. Miss me with that bull jive.
All right. The Frankfurt Fireballs. Johnny, we get to start with you.
This man is a grinder. Patrick, he gives it his all week after week. He has interesting trades. He makes interesting maneuvers politically and otherwise within the league. But he always seems to fall short. He's never won a playoff game, and he's been in this league since its inception. I hope to see more from him soon.
Well, I think I have a better take on the Fireballers than that. For one, they have won a playoff game. I would never forget that. In season 1, winning the semifinals and going to the championship, falling just short to the eventual winner. But
You're right.
Besides that, the Fireballers, we know them to be a team of stats and a team built for the future. Always built well for the future. So that's why I think Fireballers are going to be in the championship this year.
All right, guys, the Bluegrass Bulldogs.
Bulldogs are a team that's really turned around since their inception. And I think that they do pretty well when it comes to making trades. The Bulldogs always make good trades and come up. But, they had their one championship, and they're not really poised for a super successful season this year.
There's one thing I can say about the Bulldogs is that they're scrappy. I see something in Josh that I saw in a young Jonny who won the inaugural season. This ability to get it out of the mud, to come from a place of no one believing in you and win a championship against all odds. But beyond that, there's not much to him.
The Night Shift Ninjas.
With this GM, there really isn't much to say. He's been a part of the league 2 years. He's done nothing. I think he was Rookie of the Year when he came into the league. There weren't many other contestants that year for Rookie of the Year. So he's a decent guy. We'll see where he leads this year.
Johnny, I didn't even realize he had been in the league for 2 whole years already. This guy has really skated under the radar, except for one important point. Great basketball player. And probably the only reason he's still in the league at this point.
The Atlantis Hospital.
The Atlantis Hospital. What more could I say about them than 11th place? This team is just consistently upper, lower class, if that even is a thing. They won't go beyond even 10th place, but an easy win nonetheless for the rest of the league, so good to keep around.
Uh, the Atlantis Hospital has been under several monikers throughout the year. Tamer's a decent GM, maybe mediocre. I would go as far as to say decent. I like the guy. He's fun to trade with, as his cousin and brother know. And I hope that this year he does something for himself and not others.
All right, guys. Team last.
Team last, the name changes week to week, day to day, year to year. We know the GM as Joel. There were moments he was great, and they were generally preceded and superseded by moments of dog and terribleness. And if it wasn't for his incredible basketball skills, he wouldn't be here.
Well, I think Joel has more potential in him, and what he really needs to bring back is the pairing of himself and Giannis Antetokounmpo. When he had Giannis on his team, he was unstoppable. Now, was that Joel and his GMing skills? Or was that Giannis and the fact that any team with Giannis would be good? But I'd love to see Joel continue it in the future.
The Shredders.
Well, the Shredders are an interesting team and an interesting GM. He had a disappointing season last year, but he's had some very strong regular seasons in the past. So I would certainly expect more from him this year.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rick. He's a fascinating GM. I feel like when he's doing well, he's fire hot. He's like Klay Thompson, the way he can heat up. And when he's cold, he's ice cold. I hope that he keeps his love for the game, love for the league going this year, because as long as you have that, your team will always strive and prosper.
And rounding out the bottom of our current GMs and teams, JT is dead.
I got a lot of things I could say about Team JT is dead, but I'll keep it short and sweet. Nick Purdom, he has all of the intangibles any GM could ever need. He just needs to perform. He needs to put pen to paper, words to action.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. I would say he has zero intangibles. In fact, he has zero fantasy skill at all. When has this man ever done something that you said, wow, in fantasy basketball? So I would expect him to finish exactly where he's at this next season.
All right, guys.
Just roasted.
And if we could, just real quick, I want to get your thoughts on the two new candidates joining the league this year, Michael and Elijah. We'll start with you.
Well, I'm happy to see both of these candidates enter the league. I think they're going to be great fits for the league. Elijah, we know to be a good basketball player, a well-knowledgeable basketball NBA fan as well. So I think he's probably the odds-on favorite for Rookie of the Year. But that's not to say Michael can't do it. I think Michael probably has the heart of a lion and really the passion to make it. So I'm looking forward to seeing the competition between the two.
I agree with you. I'd say that most people are writing Dirty Mike off, but I think that chip on his shoulder is his fuel. I think he could be the Rookie of the Year. It just depends on how much effort Elijah's going to put into this. He's the young Nostradamus of fantasy, but will it matter?
All right, guys, interesting stuff. Next in NBA news, Ime Udoka caught in a scandal having an affair with someone inside the Celtics organization. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
There's some really odd news that's come out from the Celtics organization. It seems to have leaked a little bit early, it appears, because they didn't really have an answer to whether or not they were going to suspend him until day 2 after allegations came out that he had been in some alleged sexual misconduct with one, if not more, women in the front office of the Celtics organization. I personally can't believe that Brad Stevens or the organization would suspend their coach for a year who just got them to the finals. He's defensive minded. He got the team to believe, to build and buy in together, helped make Marcus Smart Defensive Player of the Year. I find it hard to believe that they would remove him if this wasn't some serious stuff going on. I believe I heard in a few reports that one of the victims was alleging that it was non-consensual, the affair that was going on. I don't know what to think about the man. It's not my place to judge, but I will say that this is troubling for the Celtics and the Celtics organization. And it's very troubling for the team next year, who's already had to make a large change, welcoming in Udoka in the past season. Even though he was an assistant, to go from Brad Stevens to Udoka was a very different play style. Um, I'm interested to see if it will affect fantasy.
Look, it's obviously a terrible situation, and the allegations that are out are just horrible to hear. But I know Brad Stevens. This guy is a basketball operations guru. He's also a coaching guru. He would only ever do what's in the best interest of the basketball team. So if he thinks a 1 year suspension is the tweak that this team needs to get over the hump to the finals, that's what he would do. This man, Brad Stevens, he's going to pick the right man for the job to be coach, even if it's himself. Look, the Celtics, they might not have been happy with the way Marcus Smart was limited last year under Ime Udoka. He was limited offensively, taking less three-pointers, taking less shots. They might want someone in there to just unleash Marcus Smart, the true defensive GOAT on the Celtics. So while Ime Udoka and the allegations are terrible, this might actually be in the best interest of Celtics basketball.
I completely disagree. I don't know how you could see that. Marcus Smart in the playoffs limited himself. He had one game where he scored over 20 points in the finals, and the rest of it he was just throwing up wild balls to the rim hoping they would go in. He had several massive mistakes down the stretch in games throughout the playoffs. I think he's a great defensive player. I think he's the heart and soul of that team, but I don't think he was limited in any way by Udoka. And I agree that Brad Stevens is a guru, but there's no way suspending the coach that you had just promoted to take your role for having an affair with various people in your front office is good for the team and positive for the direction of the franchise. I think it's a massive smudge on the resume that this was going on and he didn't know about it before now, and they're only taking action. I mean, I don't know all the details, but they're only taking action now that they're done with the finals. Allegedly, it came out I think in July or something like that, so right at the end of the finals. I don't see how this could be positive for the Celtics in any way.
Look, everything you say there is very reasonable, and I can't even say I disagree with some of that. But I think what you're overlooking here is that this is a player's team and a player-led team. This is Jason Tatum's team. This is Marcus Smart's team. Probably not Jaylen Brown's team, but he's there too. And this team, along with Robert Williams and every other good player they have, I could go in and coach the Celtics and probably make it to the finals. We're looking at getting over the hump to that next level. And it's going to take the right person, Brad putting the right person in that job. But this is a players-led team.
And we'll see what happens, guys. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsor.
Remember simpler times? Remember the NBA bubble? After a long day of practice and repeated COVID testing, there's only one drink that can help Tyler Hero relax and unwind the night before a big game. Bubble Juice. Drink responsibly.
Welcome back to The Disputed. Now, guys, we've had a really spicy offseason with a lot of political drama going back and forth between candidates for the LM position and the council as well. The winner was Matt, kind of by a sweeping margin. What are your guys' thoughts? Has Matt made his claim as the all-time LM? Rick, we'll start with you.
Undoubtedly, yes. Matt has shown not only that he's the GOAT LM, He's the GOAT politician. This guy came from the depths. He was unanimous criminal of the year months. He was hated. The league, he had no support in the league. But what did he do? He rallied. He ditched Patrick, who's clearly holding him back, came up with Clifford, who carried all the votes for him to the victory. Now, look, could you say it was Clifford's victory? Maybe. But it was Matt, the politician, the genius politician, who put himself in that position. So yes, Matt is the GOAT LM and the GOAT politician, LM for life at his own choosing if he wants it.
I'm not ready to crown him emperor yet. He's not the GOAT LM. Now I think Matt does a lot for this league. He has put a lot of time and effort into this league, but he's also put a lot of time and effort into treason in this league and manipulating the seeding of playoffs and stealing secrets from close friends to gain an edge, a perceived edge in a fantasy playoff game. Those sorts of things, they raise questions in my mind. And, there's going to be another election. There will be another year. I can tell you that. And we'll see if in this next year he can solidify himself as LM, because I just don't see it.
Look, you're talking about Sanders Gate. You're not talking about Matt Gate. This is Sanders Gate fixing seeds. That was Sanders and Patrick's clearly issue.
You can't
Matt was
spend
a part
this.
of it. Matt was a part of it. I mean,
You
don't
can't
get me wrong.
spend this.
Don't get me wrong. But he came from that to LM of the year. He will never go lower than that. And he
It's a runoff.
still voted LM. Still voted LM. And something tells me, a little birdie tells me, Matt has something else up his sleeve in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, well, I don't know what else this little birdie told you or whatever you and the birdie smoked, but I think the little thing he has planned for the league is another act of treason, okay? He always likes to spice it up and do something criminal throughout the year. So we'll see. I voted for the guy, but I voted for his AG mainly. That was the one point you brought up that made sense, that, it was a winner. It was a win for Clifford, less so for Matt. People are they're tired. They want to get back into the season. I'm sure these feelings of resentment will boil back up, and at that time, I guarantee someone will make a move, and we'll see who the next LM is.
Exciting stuff, guys. Moving on to a pre-draft discussion. Now that we know that we're moving from points league to a category league, it's obviously going to be a lot different this year with teams and GMs making the move from their point strategies to their category strategies. What strategies do you think are going to be better suited to follow this year?
Well, I'm not positive just yet. I think you're going to have to definitely be fluid. You've got to be willing to make changes on the fly during the draft. We've changed the team layout. There's 11 players per team as opposed to 13. You're going to need to make sure that your picks in each round fall exactly with what you need, in line with the strategy you're creating. I'm sure some players will take best available, and when they choose best available, a strategy will become evident down the line, whether it be to punt field goal percentage or punt turnovers, things of that nature. I definitely don't think you can go into this season with I personally don't believe you can go in with a rigid strategy, because it could turn around and bite you when you've, picked Karl Anthony Towns, and then you've also got Russell Westbrook. And so are you punting field goal percentage or all over the place? These are good players, but you need to have a strategy that is formed and developed throughout the draft.
Well, I think if you're picking Russell Westbrook, you're punting wins. But I would say that you have to be.
Don't disagree.
You do have to go in with one very specific strategy. And I've been doing years of research into category leagues to realize what the best strategy here is.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't go into the draft in every single position in the draft drafting the best available player, you are going to fall behind. If you think you can go into the draft like the Kings and pick Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic because he's going to fit your build better, you're going to fall behind. This league requires you to pick the best available player because once the league shakes out, injuries happen, teams make trades, you're going to start to see teams shape their strategies towards playoff. And me or my team, if I was going to be building a fantasy team, it needs to be versatile so it can be ready for any opponent and be ready to switch a strategy late in the year.
I agree. I agree that you need to be versatile, and that's what this season's going to be about, being versatile.
All right. And with the switch from points to categories, I think that the trades are going to be impacted a lot as well. Are you guys excited to see more trading, or do you fear that the categories is going to allow for more trading and it's going to be advantages are going to be given even more based because it's harder to tell on who's winning a trade?
Great question, Josh. Look, we have a council this year that is going to be pretty open to trades. So you know what that means. There's going to be parity. Teams are going to be taking advantage of other teams. Teams like the Dongs or Team Last probably going to be robbed here and there. Of course, the council will let it happen and parity will increase. So, in some ways, I'm a little apprehensive. But overall, I look forward to seeing the shakeup in the league.
I think there'll be a bit more trading this year than in years past, sans trade week. I do believe that, being categories, no one is going to have a super concrete idea of what's going to be great and what's going to fall short. We don't have a crystal ball when it comes to energies, that's for sure. I think you'll have an inkling onto what trade is fishy and what trade isn't. But, I do agree there's going to be a lot of trading this year. I don't think it's going to be the same culprits. I think there's going to be a lot of tenured GMs who are going to make some poor trades early on, thinking that they're playing 5D chess when really they're playing checkers by themselves.
Like the Dong Squad.
Like the Fireballers, who haven't made a playoff win since season 1, which I recently learned.
Right. Well, thank you all for a great first episode of The Disputed. We'll be back each Wednesday with a new episode during the regular season. It was great to have you all today, and goodbye.